Alrighty, hi guys, so sorry about technical difficulties if you tried to catch me earlier and there were some issues there. So, Rebecca Connolly here to do a reading. Oh, hello, my lighting just went dark. This is going to be great, guys. So many technical difficulties. It's going to be a beautiful thing. You can't see a thing because my apartment is very dark and I really don't have any good options for it unless I sit like in front of the lamp. But I really don't want you guys to see how messy my apartment is. I really didn't clean up before doing this. So that's the beauty of technology, is I get to kind of fiddle with everything and see where we get, huh? So, we're just going to keep this going for a few minutes until people jump on. I'm going to read for an audience, right? So, let's see what we can get to work for us. Just going to do a couple of shout outs onto my Facebook page, so feel free to do the same. Invite your friends. Let's settle in, get ourselves some good stuff going. Don't mind me, I'm just posting. Alrighty, let's get some people going. I want to get started on this. Has anybody picked up their copy of Hitching the Picture yet? Anybody getting on this train, joining up with the Belltown Six-Pack and seeing what they are all about and what they have to offer? All right, let's see. Should we get started? I think we should get started. I'm really sorry again that you can't really see my face. It's nighttime and it's dark. I can't see. I can see the book, I promise. You can't see my face, but you didn't want to see my face anyway. The book's going to be there. Yes, Heather, I'm wearing a Cubs jersey because it's the only jersey I have, and it's baseball, and I'm all for it. I'm also wearing my Belltown Six-Pack shades. You can't see it because it's dark and I have terrible lighting. We've established this. It says Belltown Six-Pack right here, so if you're lucky, you might get some of these. We'll see how it goes. All right, tonight on Story Time with Rebecca Connolly, we are going through Hitching the Picture, which was released today. Hopefully you've picked that up if you have been following our post today. So we're going to start off by reading chapter 1. So, if everybody's ready, if you have your popcorn, everybody's settled in, make yourself comfortable, because I tend to write long chapters. This might take us a little bit. So, be prepared. I apologize if my face goes completely dark. I've got the TV providing light. That's how classy we are over here. All right, everybody ready? Here we go. Chapter 1. Columbus was cold in February. Not surprising, but practicing in Columbus in the cold might be surprising. Most teams had already gone to Florida or Arizona or someplace warm and temperate in the off-season. Not the Black Racers, not this year. Toughening up, Sarge had called it. He was a militant sort of manager, hence his nickname. But it had worked for the team the last 3 years, and would undoubtedly do the same this year. They'd head down to Arizona next week for a few days of warmer training before starting up some games, but until then, they'd be here, where it was cold, and it was early. Perfect for another sort of practice entirely. Something entirely private. Ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, logic. The net of the pitcher's pocket didn't respond to the recitation of the 4 aspects of philosophy, but it did catch each of the 4 balls in varying aspects of the strike zone, which was good enough for Sawyer Bennett. Didn't help him prepare for his history of philosophy final, but it was good enough. He walked down the stretch, gently shaking out his right arm to loosen it up, then scooping up the balls, shoving 2 in his pockets. He craned his neck, wincing at the crack. Logic. New and necessary reasoning. He exhaled, sputtering his lips as he walked back to the practice mound, shaking out his arm again. Consistency, soundness, completeness. The unmistakable sound of cleats against concrete met his ears, and he clamped his mouth shut, clearing his throat when he reached the mound again, dropping the balls down except for the one in his glove. He listened for the cleats to go somewhere and heard the storage closet open and the cleats disappear within. Must have been Gru then. He was the only one who ever got here as early as Sawyer, and was equally self-sufficient. Sawyer looked down the stretch again, exhaling slowly, forcing away all thoughts but for the ball in his hand and the hours of studying in his head. He waited, then wound up. Aristotle, he grunted as he released the ball. Strike. He picked up the next ball and repeated his rhythm. Pythagoras. Strike. Thales. Strike. Socrates. Wild pitch. Sawyer growled and cracked his neck again. Stupid, stupid. Socrates didn't develop it, he used it. Who are we calling Socrates, and what did he use? Biting back a curse, Sawyer turned to face his teammate, punching idly into his glove. Hey, Mace. Skeeter, Mace greeted, folding his tattooed arms and leaning against the cage. Socrates. Who? No one, Sawyer sighed. Well, no, actual Socrates. What about him? Oh boy. Sawyer punched his glove again, fighting a wince. He didn't develop deductive reasoning. True, Mace agreed with a nod, shocking Sawyer. But his name was used so often in the description of it that it's a common misconception. Sawyer blinked at the thick catcher, who was more likely to be found in a biker gang than behind a textbook. Or so he thought. Mace grinned, his eyes crinkling as they usually did. I was a philosophy major at Ohio State, Skeet. I know what I'm talking about. Sawyer shook his head. I can't see that. That's why I did it, came the quipped response. He cleared his throat and straightened. All humans are mortal. Socrates is human. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Sawyer blinked again. Uh-huh. Mace's eyes narrowed, arms still folded. Which is an example of... The panic known to every student in existence when called upon unexpectedly hit Sawyer square in the gut. Syllogism? Question or answer? Answer, Sawyer said quickly, scratching the back of his neck with his glove. Mace nodded once. Correct. Then his head tilted. Why are you thinking philosophy while warming up? Without a bullpen catcher, I might add. Sawyer chuckled uneasily, stepping off the mound. Just loosening up. Miguel wasn't here yet, so I pulled out the net. Used to throw to the net all the time as a kid. Kinda nostalgic, you know. No biggie, I owned through a couple. And the philosophy? He wasn't about to confess to the catcher the real reason, so he shrugged and lied. Dabbling. You know what a head case I am. Mace rolled his eyes, but he smiled. Sure do. Come on, let's get a lap or two in before Gru makes us field hits. Grateful for the change in topic, Sawyer nodded and set down his glove, jogging out of the bullpen cages, exhaling a silent breath of relief. He'd have to figure out another way to quiz himself now, which would do just as well. He wasn't on this week. He could afford a little distraction at practice. Normally, he was completely focused at all times, and he was teased for it, but off weeks were another matter. He was way more human on off weeks. Spring training or not, he was glad for the off week, such as it was. There wasn't much by way of rest in the major leagues, not if one really wanted to make it. So taking advantage of what rest was available was a win. And perfect timing for a final exam, which is why he had scheduled it that way. That, and a trip home. Exam, then flight. Back to Belltown and Belltown University, where, consequently, he could return the textbooks he'd ordered and pick up the next set. Convenience was sweet indeed. Provided he could get away from his family and the rest of the six-pack, that is. It could prove pretty challenging. Every single one of them would have a field day if they knew Sawyer was taking online classes. Rabbit might be chill about it, but none of the others would be. But they all had their degrees. Only he had entered the draft without a diploma in hand. That was public knowledge, and nobody cared. But Sawyer did. He'd made a promise, and he had to keep it. Eventually. He began to mentally recite answers in time with his jogging. Must, eat, everything, pre-performance, says, ABBA. Milesian, Eleatic, Ephesian, pluralism, Pythagoreanism, sophism, atomism. Want help studying? Mace asked carefully as they started their second lap, nodding as the other guys started following suit. Sawyer side-eyed his catcher and teammate. Studying what? May snorted once and wiped an arm over his mouth and neatly trimmed goatee. Nobody dabbles in deductive reasoning. Not even you. Not going to ask questions, just offering to help. Got an exam? Final, Sawyer admitted, dropping his voice, although no one else was close enough to catch their conversation. When? Tomorrow, I think. Not sure? Sawyer exhaled and saluted Sarge as they passed the dugout, and the other guys doing the same. Independent study. Just has to be this week. Oh, and Heather, I'm glad you think I could pronounce that. I totally made that up. Back to the book. Mace grunted. And you're off to the motherland soon. 6-pack reunion? Something like that. Okay. Tonight after film, we'll grab a bite, then come back to the clubhouse. I'll tell Jess not to expect me. A twinge of guilt burst within him like a nasty bout of heartburn, and he screwed up his face in response. Don't do that. I don't want you to upset Jess and give me philosophy pointers. His catcher chortled a rumbling laugh. You kidding? I'm antisocial, remember? Jess always wants me to get out with the guys and do something. She'll be elated. Done deal, Skeet. Be there or be Pythagoras. He laughed harder at his own joke. Sawyer, however, responded instinctively. Developer of the Pythagorean theorem, fundamental rationale in Euclidean geometry, had his own movement, and most commonly attributed teaching is metempsychosis. See, I can't pronounce them. Metempsychosis. Mace came to a stop as they finished their lap, not even remotely out of breath, and gave Sawyer a look. Wow, Skeet. You're a mess. It was true, and Sawyer was well aware. I crammed last night, he admitted as he began to stretch, working on about 3 hours of sleep. Definitely don't miss college, Mace muttered, bending at the waist to stretch to the grass. Well, tell Grizz I said hi. Dude still owes me $200, so I'd appreciate it if you'd collect for me. Sawyer barked a laugh. Right, 'cause Grizz is gonna listen to me. Aw, 6-pack is back attack, Remy crowed as he practically bounded towards them. Need a groupie, Skeeter? Mace cuffed the eager shortstop, making their teammates laugh, including Remy. No TV coverage for you, Remy. Make a few plays and we'll see. The ribbing went over well with the rest, and Sawyer felt himself relaxing as they continued to warm up as a team. Baseball had always had a way of relaxing him, which was twisted, as it was also his prime source of stress and anxiety. But it was his one true love, and baseball loved him in return. Complicated relationships took work, but they could work well, or so he'd been told. He'd endure the teasing and the questions and the envy of his teammates over a 6-pack reunion. He usually got that whenever they were brought up, mostly because the media tended to frenzy a little over their brotherhood. They hadn't been the best players drafted in their year, but they had all been drafted, and fairly early at that. The name they'd earned at Belltown had carried over into the pros, and when they'd all moved up from minors, some sooner than others, things hit peak madness. Some of the guys loved the attention. Some of them didn't. But the 6-pack was special, and seeing the rest of the guys this weekend would be great. Being back in Belltown, back on campus, would be amazing. Pause for Diet Coke. He'd have to rub the lumberjack's boot just in case. He still had a few classes to go before he reached graduation, and with the season upon him, his focus would be limited at best in all things education. But a promise was a promise, and Sawyer Bennett was a man of his word. Sarge's telltale whistle pierced the air, and all of the players straightened from their stretches. Batting, he told them all, his best drill sergeant voice on full display. Gruel, start us off. Not nice, Remy muttered as they moved in that direction. Now we'll all look like crap by comparison. You always look like crap batting, Papa Jim pointed out, with the crooked grin he was known for. Sawyer laughed with the rest and pushed his educational thoughts out of his mind, for the time being at least. Smaller airports were a glorious thing. Albany wasn't that small, but it wasn't exactly a hub. Either way, Sawyer wasn't recognized as he made his way to baggage claim, and there was something to be said for that. He didn't necessarily mind being spotted and spending his time with fans, but it was also nice to get away from it, especially when he was going home. He wouldn't get away from attention at home. But Belltown was different. They had seen him grow up, knew the scabby boy he'd been, and would remember every awkward school dance he'd ever attended. He wasn't much of a celebrity there, though he did sign the occasional autograph and pause for a selfie every now and then. Mostly from kids. My ballpark food? I don't have a concession stand. If I had a concession stand, I would be all over the popcorn and the frozen chocolate malts. Back to the book. I'm going to focus here. No one his age really wanted to talk to him, and most of the older generation didn't care. It was the best. He hefted his backpack more securely over his shoulder as he passed the line at McDonald's, pulling his faded Belltown hat a bit farther down just in case. If he was right, and he usually was, his mom would be waiting for him with a small sign bearing his name as though she were only his driver. Her expression would be completely blank, but she would be fighting a smile the entire time. He could only hope and pray that she wouldn't be in costume this time. He'd never quite forgiven her for the Grinch ensemble 3 years ago. Holding his breath, he rounded the corner and moved past TSA into the main terminal, his eyes scanning the few waiting people. His mom was easy to spot. Belltown hoodie with a lumberjack on it, hair pulled back in a neat bun, faded jeans, and her favorite paint-splattered kids. And there in her hands was the sign he'd expected. This time it only read, Skeeter. Sawyer exhaled with relief and grinned as he approached her, the blank expression staying fixed on her face. Are you my ride? He asked when he reached her. Are you Skeeter? He asked. Excuse me, she retorted flatly. Could be, he replied. What's for dinner in Belltown? His mom shrugged. Not sure, really. Probably chicken and dumplings. That's my favorite, but my sister hates it. Then it's fortunate she's not coming until tomorrow. His mom's lips quirked, and her blank expression faltered as she fought a smile. Sawyer laughed and stepped forward to hug her, the familiar embrace more of a welcome home than anything he would experience the entire trip. Hi, Mom. Her arms tightened around him. Hi, sweetie. Welcome home. He pulled back and looked her over. Thanks for dressing up for me. Really, you shouldn't have. She whacked him on the arm before slipping her arm around his waist. I got up at dark 30 to get here since you insisted on an early flight instead of coming in at a regular human hour. You know full well how much I hate fast food breakfast and coffee before I've had a decent breakfast to soak it up. You're paying for Sinclair's on the way home. You owe me. Yes, ma'am, Sawyer meekly replied as they made their way to baggage claim. 3 cake donuts with maple glaze, 2 bunches of classic donut holes, and an apple raspberry bear claw. I'll even throw in a double chocolate and cinnamon hot cocoa. His mom nodded as though she'd expected nothing less. With chocolate chip marshmallows. Of course. After which, I'll drive you to the hospital for emergency treatment of your blood sugar and arteries, and possibly a scan of your stomach. Never underestimate a woman's ability to consume chocolate and carbs. Cheers. Oh, put that on a bumper sticker. The father and young son stopped on their way to security, their eyes on Sawyer, and the boy pointed. Dad! Dad! It's Sawyer Bennett! Shh! The father hushed, putting a hand on his son's shoulder. Scotty, it's not polite to point. Sawyer looked at his mom, who was already smiling, and nudged her head towards them. He returned the smile and moved to them, shaking hands with the dad firmly before crouching before the boy. Hi there, he said, shifting into his greeting fan's voice. I knew it was you, Scotty breathed, his eyes wide. I have your poster on my wall. Sawyer chuckled. Which poster, Scotty? Black racers, tomahawks, or titans? 6-pack, the boy answered. That took Sawyer by surprise, though he wasn't sure why. He was, after all, only a short distance from home and the university. He was so used to fans from the majors, even those diehards who'd followed him since minors, that he tended to forget about the hometown crowd and fellow lumberjacks. They were always, far and away, his favorite fans. 6-pack, Sawyer repeated, sitting back on his heels. Now we're talking, Scotty. He's a lumberjack at heart, Mr. Bennett, the father chimed in, putting a hand on his son's shoulder. Knew hail to Belltown before he knew the alphabet. Sawyer looked back at the kid with a smile. My man! He cupped his hands around his mouth and called, Timberline! Scotty immediately copied him. Heave-ho! As one, Scotty and Sawyer drummed their hands against their thighs. Oh, and down they go, they chanted together. A few whoops and hollers echoed in the airport, and Sawyer laughed, his face actually heating with a strange sense of embarrassment. It was tough to explain the passion that Belltown instilled in him and just how much being a lumberjack had meant to him. But there was no denying it was still there. And he saw the same passion for Belltown in the boy before him. Grinning, Sawyer took off his hat, a classic Belltown number, and took the permanent marker his mom held out, then signed the bill before handing the cap out to Scotty. Wear it with pride, Scotty. Represent. Scotty immediately put the hat on his head and bent the bill just the way Sawyer and every other baseball player did. Yes, sir. Thanks, Sawyer. My pleasure. You ever get to play at Ackerman Field, you give me a call. I'll sit in your cheering section. He rose and nodded at Scotty's dad before putting his arm around his mom and continuing towards baggage claim. I love when you do that, his mom told him, patting his cheek fondly. Never gets old. I promise you it does, Sawyer countered, but never with Belltown. Your dad would be so proud, Skeet. Sawyer fought the urge to stiffen, swallowed instead, and pulled his mom in a little tighter. Thanks. Now what's this Rachel tells me about you and some guy getting serious? The diversion worked, though it was obvious his mom wasn't fooled by it. I lost my place. Give me a sec. She'd learned not to discuss her late husband with Sawyer, and she respected that boundary for the most part. She probably thought it was too hard to talk about him, and she would be right, but not for the reasons she expected. He was fairly certain she had no idea what Sawyer had promised him and what was going on within him as time went on and the promise went unfulfilled. He wasn't inclined to share that with his mom, and definitely not with his sister, and since neither of them had expressed strong opinions about his leaving school for the draft without a degree, he didn't feel the need to inform them that he was working on said degree. Sort of. They'd managed to get his bags and get out of the airport without any further attention, and soon enough they were on the road towards Belltown. Normally he slept on this drive, but this morning he felt like watching. His mom chatted for a while, her usual 80s mix playing in the background, and he watched the scenery of eastern New York and then western Massachusetts passing by. Familiar signs and sights made him smile, and he felt the familiar twinge of excitement coming home always gave him. Then he saw it. The famous sign just outside of Belltown, hand-carved and faded, though restored every 2 years. Welcome to Lumberjack Country. As per tradition, he rolled down the window, stuck his head out, and bellowed, Timberline! His mother shook her head, laughing. Sawyer Charles, it's 8:30 a.m. on a Thursday. You're going to wake someone. Tradition is tradition, Mom, he replied unapologetically as he rolled the window back up. As is the drive through campus. Come on, let's go. You are so demanding, she complained as she turned towards campus. Sawyer shrugged. You're getting Sinclair's out of it, remember? He looked back at the approaching campus, smiling. Then he sat forward, focusing on the lone woman walking out of the glass onion and turning to walk in the same direction they were driving. Dark hair, rosy complexion, brilliant smile, and startlingly familiar. He wrenched around and tried to get a better look, but the road curved and it was impossible. Surprisingly disappointed, he turned back around, scowling. What was that? His mom asked, giving him a curious look. He debated his answer, then exhaled. I thought I saw Erica more. There was silence for a moment, and then, I haven't thought about her in years. She was always my favorite of your girlfriends. What's she up to? Sawyer shook his head. I don't know. We lost touch a while back. Oh, that's a shame. I wonder what she'd be doing here. Probably wasn't her mom, he told her. Pretty sure she moved away. But her family still has the farm. I see Jean every now and then at the market. Sawyer let his mom go on, tuning out for the first time. He wasn't going to pretend to understand why he thought he saw Erica, or why he was disappointed he couldn't be sure it was her. Be sure it was her, I can talk. But disappointed he was, and his thoughts immediately filled with memories of her and of them. Strange how welcoming those were. Just like Belltown. And that, ladies and gents, is chapter 1 of Hitching the Pitcher, now available wherever books are sold. I don't know about that, I just made that up. So that's chapter 1. It's really fun. This whole story is really, really fun. I liked the idea of starting off with the picture. We took I don't know if you guys know this, we took a quiz when we were starting the plotting process of this series. And it described each position on the field as if it were like a personality test. And it was hilarious. We were absolutely dying. And it actually inspired my perception of Skeeter, Sawyer. And it just kind of started forming around that. With this character, what were we going to do with him? And I'm not going to spoil anything. But let's just say that he's not as crazy as he thinks he is. So it's a really fun story. And I feel like I need to apologize to Sophia, Sophia Summers. She's going to do a reading tomorrow, I think, unless Heather's doing it. I think it's Sophia. And if I remember correctly, I think she has the school song. Yeah, she does. I'm so sorry, Sophia. So if you like, I will post a recording tomorrow. I will sing the school fight song that we wrote for this, so that she doesn't have to. So I will do that. I don't have a pet band or anything like that, but if you're really interested, I will. If you're interested, if anybody's interested, I will post a video either tomorrow or later in this week of me belting out Hail to Belltown, so that you all know how it goes and we can all sing the song together at our next gathering. So we'll figure this out. We'll touch base, Sophia and Heather and I will touch base and figure out what we're gonna do about the fight song. I just realized that the fight song, that Hail to Belltown, is in chapter 2. I should have read chapter 2. I'm the one who wrote the melody. Anyway, so somehow you guys will get to hear the school fight song, and then we can all learn it together. I'll also have to find a marching band or something to get that. So that's chapter 1 of Hitching the Pitcher. I hope you guys enjoy it. And I know this is live, but anybody watching this, anybody watching it later, continue to post your comments. We will respond. We are so excited to start this journey with the Belltown 6-pack, and we hope you are too. We'll keep releasing these books for the next couple of months, and then we'll see what other adventures we can come up with. So thank you for joining. Tune in tomorrow. I'm not sure what time. We'll post a couple of warnings before we start it, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.